Right then, okay, so what's going on here? It's a bit pixelated, aren't I? So we can just sort that out for a bit. Yeah, that's got it. Why has a sonic screwdriver got a light on the end anyway? It doesn't make any sense, does it? It's a sonic screwdriver, it's not a laser screwdriver. No. Bloody reboot. Bloody reboot. I blame RTD. Whoever he is. He is, of course, the droid from Star Wars, as any fool know. Do you remember I said I wouldn't do any low-hanging fruit? I'm not going to do any low-hanging fruit. I'll do people I just agree with mostly, because that's more interesting, isn't it? I said. I was about to break that resolution. Break that resolution because I looked at this article and I went, oh my god! I got to talk about this. There's going to be some geek shaming, but it's all in the good cause. It's in the cause of women's rights. Geek shaming in the cause of women's rights. So don't be offended, you sad nerd. A new study shows our Star Trek jokes and geek culture make women feel unwelcome in computer science. And this article is either written by Sapna Cherian, who is an associate professor of psychology at the University of Washington. Her research interests include identity stereotypes and prejudice, and she has published numerous articles on these topics in journals such as Psychological Science, General Personality, and Social Psychology, and Psychological Bulletin. Yeah. Or it's possibly written by Sienna Ziegler, who is an analyst at EMC Research. She holds a BA in psychology from Reed College and a master's degree in social psychology from the University of Washington. She probably wrote it, and Sapna is taking the credit because she outranks her. So both academics are listed on this article, which is in quotes, as being the author, but as you'll see, it often speaks in first person, so the idea that they both wrote it is a bit bizarre. And of course, casting aspersions by suggesting that Sapna's got one of her research students to write it and then passed it off, I suppose. Not passed it off, she has credited it. She's credited the writer. I am casting aspersions, but I know that's how it often goes in academia. So. As a high school sophomore in the 1990s, I took a mandatory computer science class that had a reputation of being difficult. Mandatory, so she had no choice. She had to do it. She had to do this course that she had no interest in. It was difficult. She had no interest in it. The word among girls was that the only students who did well in the course were the Dungeons and Dragons boys. Alright, so why might boys who are Dungeons and Dragons boys do better in computer science than girls whose hobbies may include such things as karaoke, for example? Or it's a girly hobby. And drama. I'll admit it. I'm an actor, but I know that if you have an Amdram group, you'll find more girls will join than boys. The problems we have with Shakespeare. Doing Amdram Shakespeare we used to as a teenager. You found you had more girls than there were girl parts, because Shakespeare didn't write any girl parts because there weren't any female actors when he was writing. There were some very accomplished female impersonators. There were more male roles than male actors, so girls often had to play boys in Shakespeare societies, I remember. Yeah, so if you've got that as a hobby, why does that not help you in computer science? Well, I think because if you're familiar with Dungeons and Dragons, you have a hobby that involves playing a probability. and working with tables and working with variables like what's your strength stats and what's your HP, hit points for those not in the know. What's your armor class? I mean, actually, you're dealing with skills that are readily applicable to writing computer programs in your hobby. It's funny, isn't it? That having a hobby that relates to a subject makes that subject easier for you. What a surprise. I think if your hobby is visiting museums, you probably do better at history than if your hobby isn't visiting museums. Just a guess. A very nice teacher taught the class that he often reinforced this male-oriented image of who could be successful with nerdy Star Trek jokes and other pop culture references more likely to resonate with boys than girls. Unsurprisingly, boys dominated classroom interactions, answered questions confidently and turned in their tests quickly. Was he actually asking questions on Star Trek? Anyone in the class tell me what was the character played by Joan Collins in City on the Edge of Forever? Yes, you at the back, boy! Was it Edith Keeler, sir? Yes, it was. Extra credit. I don't think he was, you know. I don't think knowing your Star Trek actually contributes to answering questions or how well you do on your test papers. Many of those boys went on to become computer scientists and engineers, while girls largely turned to fields like social sciences, medicine and business. Because all the pop culture references in the medicine classes were on Scrubs, which the girls had seen. Girls had seen the episode of Scrubs, so they were alright. The same dynamic persists on a broad scale across the United States. Although women have made great strides in STEM fields like biology, chemistry and math, a large gender gap persists in computer science, as well as engineering and physics. In fact, just 18% of undergraduate degrees in the subject go to women today, down from 29% when I was in college. The gender disparity for going to college at all is 13%. 13% more women go to college than men. It's interesting that they're not going into computer science, isn't it? Why are they avoiding computer science? And why is that more important than the fact that 13% less men are going to college than women? A recent psychological study I conducted with my colleagues, published this month in the Psychological Bulletin, has a clear message about our best hope for diversifying computer science. As you can see, there's a little linky there, so you can follow it through to find the paywall that the study's actually behind. So I have to take it that she is representing the study accurately, but of course, it's her study. She contributed to it. So let's assume that her article about the study is going to honestly represent it. To draw more girls into STEM fields, it's not enough to provide more learning opportunities. The cultures in these fields need to change to communicate to girls that they belong in them just as much as boys do. What has not occurred to her is, of course, that the science fiction genre itself might offer learning opportunities. Possibly the reason that boys are more interested in science is because the culture of science fiction genre, actually encourages the sort of thinking that having said that, unless it's supposed to be a sonic screwdriver, it's got a blue light at the end. It's just a magic wand, really, isn't it? But anyway, in theory, science fiction does offer some learning opportunities in science. Actually, Doctor Who offers some learning opportunities in history as well. My kids have learned a lot about history from Doctor Who. But I do have to remind them when we are talking about history, some of the things that they see in Doctor Who didn't really happen that way. then it's opened up the discussion. And I think the same is true of science fiction as well. Even though science fiction does get it wrong quite a lot and does have science as magic, it starts pseudoscience as magic. It does at least open up the discussion. So you start talking about science and which bits of the science fiction is good science, which is bad science, like you shouldn't be able to hear explosions in space. And what does actually happen when somebody is flushed out of an airlock? Do they explode or do they freeze? We don't know yet, do we? Because no one's actually done that. But watching science fiction opens up those discussion points, gets you thinking. And really good science fiction is what Einstein would have called a thought experiment. You must say really good science fiction. I've been a bit of a snob there. I'm saying things like Harlan Ellison and K. Dick, stuff like that. The thought experiments. What ifs? What would happen if this was the case? If we set up this rule, what would be the result? And thought experiments is a basic part of science. So again, reading science fiction is a hobby in which you're practicing the skills of science before you even get to the classroom. I'll say before you get to the classroom. You probably have done some science at school by the time you start reading science fiction. You tend to start reading science fiction kind of in your very early teens. Although I was reading science fiction before that, I know there was science fiction for kids around when I was a kid. Terry Nation wrote a few books for kids. Harry Harrison. Do you remember the Stainless Steel Rat? Did anyone read the Stainless Steel Rat books? They were brilliant. 2000 AD. Which is still called 2000 AD. When I was a kid, that was a futuristic date. 2000 AD, it's called 2000 AD because it was set in the future. Still called 2000 AD now, and it's now 2016. In fact, the first automatic doors appeared in Star Trek rather than in real life. When they did Star Trek, they had to push the doors along on rollers. They had props men outside the doors going shh, shh. I don't know if they made the noises shh, shh. I don't know if they actually did that. They pushed them backwards and forwards so that on rollers. And then people watching Star Trek said, oh, why can't we have doors like that? And so then the research went into creating doors that would do that in real life. And now we have doors that do that in real life. Everywhere. Go into your local library and your doors do that, don't they? Shh, shh. Never fully explained how there's an episode in which, because the doors seem to know, just as you walk towards the doors, they open, shh, shh. But in one of them, Spock walks into a room, calls the door, shh, shh, and then he's in despair because I think it's a mock time, one of these ones where he's having emotions. There's a few episodes where Spock slowly develops emotions. And in despair, he leans back on the door and goes, ah! Why didn't the door open? How did the door know, oh, he doesn't want me to open right now? Must be telepathic. Telepathic doors, they're very clever. Those doors are far more clever than the ones in the supermarket. We analysed over 1,000 research articles to determine what distinguishes the more gender-balanced fields, biology, chemistry and math, from computer science, engineering and physics, which have greater gender disparities. We found the difference comes down to culture. Computer science, engineering and physics have more masculine cultures than biology, chemistry and mathematics. See, it ends in an S, that's why it should be called maths and not math. Anyway, and that these masculine cultures are turning women away. So much for gender being a social construct, eh? So, worried about why girls aren't going into sciences. Not worried about why girls aren't interested in science fiction. Why aren't girls interested in science fiction? It's clear, like I've said. early experiences in science fiction lead to practicing skills that are later useful in doing proper science. So why are girls not interested in science fiction? You might find the reason they're not interested in science fiction is the same reason they're not interested in science. The girls that are interested in science fiction will be interested in science. But it might be there's a very strong link between being interested in science fiction and being interested in science. Maybe there's more to be done to get girls into science fiction. We've already got that, really, haven't we? I mean, that's what the fact that there's so much shipping in the new Doctor Who is all about, is trying to get girls into science fiction. In fact, even Star Trek Next Generation was more soapy. And the latest Star Trek franchises like Deep Space Nine and Voyager were more soap-ish than the original Star Trek, the 1960s Star Trek. There were more ongoing plots about relationships between crew members and stuff, and that was all supposed to make it more appealing to women, because it was, prior to that, it was very gendered as being a sort of masculine TV program. And by putting soap elements in Star Trek, it got girls interested in it, because girls like soaps. Second reason why I think girls like soaps is because, in the same way as paintballing is safe warfare, as by going paintballing you can have all the experience of warfare, but you know you're not actually going to get shot. No one dies. Very rarely do people die from paintballing. I'm quite interested to know if there's any paintballing deaths, but I should imagine that the death toll in paintballing is significantly less than the death toll in actual warfare. So paintballing is safe warfare, and soaps is safe gossiping. No one gets hurt. You can gossip all you like about people in soaps, and no one really gets hurt. I say no one really gets hurt until one of the actors in the soaps gets attacked because some idiot can't tell the difference between them and their character, and their characters turned out to be a paedophile or a wife beater or something, and then they get beaten up. I'm just an actor. It's just a character I play. Leave me alone. And that happens. But as I say, less people get beaten up as a result of gossiping about soap characters than get beaten up as a result of gossiping about real people. In the same way as there's a much lower death toll in paintballing than there is in real warfare. So soap operas are safe gossiping, and that's why we do it. We enjoy soaps more than men do, because they can get that sort of natural impulse out of their system and there's no victim. Specific factors include male-oriented stereotypes about the people in the fields, stereotypes that women have lower abilities, and a dearth of female role models. It's funny actually, because I suppose the thing is, you don't just want a female scientist, you want a female scientist that you want to be. So I think maybe, because I was going to say, oh well, Doctor Who, Doctor Who. Zoe Harriet, she was a scientist, computer scientist. And Liz Shaw, she was a scientist. I don't really know what science it was, probably chemistry. And then you got Nyssa, she was a scientist. And yeah, then we got Osgood. Yeah. Actually, Osgood, I think this is where Stephen Moffat's failed, because he just went, oh, let's do a scientist. Well, with a scientist character, we'll make her a nerd. And that's the real problem, isn't it? The real problem is that the nerd image is off-putting. And it's off-putting for both men and women, really. No one really wants to be a nerd. And nerds been thinking. Actually, nerds come round. When I was a teenager, it was very negative to be a nerd. And there was a kind of thing of, boys that have no girlfriends. Boys, they won't have girlfriends. It was never quite clear whether somebody was a nerd because they didn't have a girlfriend or somebody didn't have a girlfriend because they were nerds. It's kind of a vicious cycle, of course. Because if you didn't have a girlfriend, then you had hobbies instead of having a girlfriend. And hobbies made you a nerd. And being nerds were unattractive, so you were kind of a nerd because you didn't have a girlfriend and because you were a nerd because you didn't get a girlfriend either. So it kind of went around. I remember my early 20s taking a girlfriend back to my place for the first time. For the first few times we'd slept together, I slept at her place. And getting to my room, and before I left my room, I was like, oh shit, I've got comics in there. She's going to find out I'm a nerd. I managed to keep it from her all this time. Okay, I'll let her in. She's going to discover I'm a nerd. So I said, before we go in, there's something to tell you. Obviously, she thought I was something horrific to tell her. And she go on. I've got quite a large comic collection. She goes, oh, which comic writers do you read? Grant Morrison and Neil Gaiman. And she went, oh, brilliant. Alan Moore? So actually she was all up for it. But, I had kind of learnt that you hide your nerd away. If you wanted to get a girlfriend, you had to hide your nerd away, hide your nerdiness away. And it was always something that was very embarrassing. You didn't want girls to find out that you were a nerd. And that stayed with me. That stayed with me even into my 30s, really. I remember I was doing a rehearsal for a play, and we had somebody who was going to do the speech in the middle of the play, so he wasn't actually an actor. He'd come along. He was a cryptozoologist. It's a pseudoscience for you. He was a cryptozoologist, which means he went looking for animals that probably didn't exist, in the hope of finding a long lost animal like the Loch Ness Monster or Bigfoot or something. And he would do a little lecture in the middle of the play about dragons. It was a series of plays, so one time he came to lecture about dragons, and the next time he did a lecture about fairies, and the next time he did a lecture about that. Anyway, during the rehearsal, I was supposed to be unconscious during part of the rehearsal, and some money had fallen out of my pocket. So as the scene ended, he stood over me and he pointed down with his walking cane, because he was very eccentric and he had a walking cane. He pointed down his walking cane at the money on the floor and he said, "Change, my dear, not a moment too soon." Shit. And he said, "Oh, sorry, you obviously don't get the reference. I thought you would, you came across as somebody who might know a bit of Doctor Who." And I was thinking, yeah, I got the reference. I was thinking, there are girls here, but I thought I might be in with a chance with. I don't want you decloseting me to explain my references. "Change, my dear, and not a moment too soon" was Colin Baker's first line as the Doctor after regenerating. I think Perry asks him, "What just happened?" or something like that, I don't know. And he starts over, "Change, my dear, and not a moment too soon." It's ironic, because that's when Doctor Who started turning really shit. That's the thing. That's something I love. I love Doctor Who. And it was something that I had to hide away because it would make me unattractive to women. Which is quite sad, really. Very gynocentric, but I was. And it's very sad that one feels that one has to hide away one's passions, because those passions might make you less attractive to women. But it did kind of change around. It did change around in the 90s, and you had people like Jonathan Ross and Sean Pegg and Eddie Izzard sort of like all being open about being geeks. Quentin Tarantino as well. That was another celebrity from the 90s that made geek look cool. And maybe Jarvis Cocker. It kind of turned things around. It made geeky sexy again. Oh, sexy again. Was it ever sexy? Actually, I think it was. I think it was in the 50s it was. I think in the 50s, being a geek was kind of sexy. It was the boys in the back room. Clever boys in the back room, the boys in the back room, they helped us win the war. All that sort of thing. And it was towards the end of the 70s and into the 80s, it became very, very negative to be geeky. And there was a lot of stereotypes about geeks as anoraks, train spotters. There was a sort of like element of geeks are socially incompetent, and that became a stereotype that geeks are socially incompetent. And as a result, people didn't want to be geeks anymore. Now, what do you think of the stereotype that a group is socially incompetent? I suppose this is actually true. It's actually true when you look at the homosexual community as well, where, you know, before it was acceptable to be gay, it was only camp gay men that really struggled to hide it, that were open about being gay. So that reinforced the stereotype that gay men were camp. I think in the same way, because it was shameful to be geeky, it was only the people that couldn't hide being geeky that were seen as geeky. And of course, the ones that struggle to hide it are the ones with social deficits, social skill deficits, because it's much harder to hide your true nature if you have a social skill deficit, right? So that was kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. The trouble with it was that if you were a geek, kind of making fun of other geeks was a way of proving that you weren't that much of a geek. It's kind of what I used to call Quinlankism, the characteristic of certain geeks or nerds to dissociate themselves from being a nerd by asserting their superiority over other geeks or nerds as being sadder or nerdier than they are. Quinlank, there's a character in Fist of Fun called Simon Quinlank, who is clearly, I'm the hobby king! He was the hobby king, and he was very competitive because he was the king of hobbies. And he would sometimes have other people that were geeky he would refer to as being really sad. I think there was that kind of like that competitive edge that came about because there was such shame associated with being a geek, that the way to prove that you weren't that much of a geek was take the piss out of other geeks. And there was that whole get a life thing. You need to get a life. It's not real, you know. It's not real. If anyone sort of like picks out something like, somebody picks out something like, well, why has a sonic screwdriver got a light at the end? They go, it's not real, you know. Just pretend. Get sad, get a life. There's that kind of thing of like a one-upmanship of I'm less geeky than you was going on, because there had become an association between being a geek and shame. And it sort of did turn around in the 90s a bit. I think it turned around in the 90s because actually it was noticed that people that were geeky were actually doing quite well. Financially, they were doing quite well. Because suddenly there was the Year 2K thing going on, and suddenly they were getting really well-paid jobs. Yeah, but Stephen Moffat, he's kind of ridden up on that, because Stephen Moffat's not seen as a sad man, and he's clearly a geek. Clearly loves his Doctor Who. Oh, RTD, of course, who isn't really Astromech droid from Star Wars. He's actually the writer of Queer as Folk. When he was being interviewed about Queer as Folk, because one of the characters in Queer as Folk is a Whovian, and his boyfriend gives him a real life canine, full size canine, as a love gift. And Russell Davies was interviewed about this, and this is before he became producer of Doctor Who. And I was saying, "Are you a Doctor Who fan?" And he said, "Oh no, I'm not a fan. I'm not really a fan of the program. I just know quite a bit about it because I wrote a novel once." Well, as soon as he's produced Doctor Who, he's saying I've been a fan forever. And I think that was a truer thing. I think it was just like he didn't want to admit he was a Doctor Who fan because it was uncool. He had to come out of the closet about being a Doctor Who fan. It's ironic, really. More shameful than being gay. And Stephen Moffat as well. You know, I think Stephen Moffat was too cool to be a geek. And then, of course, as soon as he gets a chance to work the show, of course, he came out about it. And then he's created Osgood as the science advisor for the unit. Is Osgood, and she's a nerd. she's a stereotypical nerd. She wears a duffel coat, and she's a fangirl because she wears the Doctor Who scarf, and she needs to take the she's asthmatic as well, and she's given all these sort of like traits that we associate with the sort of negative traits of what a geek looks like. You're kind of pissing on your own side there. You've managed to prove that being a geek doesn't mean that you're going to be uncool, and being a geek doesn't mean that you've got a lack of social skills, and being a geek doesn't mean that you can't be sexy or whatever. Being a geek doesn't mean that you can't be witty. And then he produces this character. She's a stereotypical geek. And as I say, Doctor Who, you had Zoe Harriet, who's a computer scientist, and is clearly has social skills, and clearly is not unattractive. Clearly does have a sense of style. If catsuits is your thing, and why shouldn't it be? Zoe Harriet is also a fangirl. She reads a comic book called The Carcass, and we know this because they get to meet the carcass or representation of him in the land of fiction. But the difference with Zoe Harriet is her fangirlishness is played as though it were normal. It's not played as something that makes her freakish. It's not a caricature. And you have Liz Shaw, who's a scientist as well, although she probably is a chemist rather than a physicist. And you have lots of female scientist characters turn up in different stories. I'm going to list companions. I can't list all of them. And then you have Nyssa. Nyssa's clearly not socially incompetent and not unattractive. You've kind of got Ace. I don't know if Ace counts as a scientist or not. She makes bombs. I suppose she is. Yeah, she did chemistry class and just learnt to make bombs in it, rather than. Until she probably didn't do her exams. She probably learned what she needs to learn from doing chemistry, which was make explosions. But passing the exam probably wasn't that important to her. Somebody might want to point out that Mel and Perry were scientists too, that Mel was a computer programmer and Perry was a botanist, but quite frankly, we've only got your word for that. There's no on-screen evidence that either of these characters have done any science at any point, which is an example of how writing female scientist characters can be done badly. Yeah, you had scientist characters throughout Doctor Who that were both socially competent and had sex appeal. And then you come all the way around to now, after all these years of progression, and what do we have as the science advisor for the unit? The stereotypical nerd like that. This is work. You've now dragged the stereotypical nerd out of the 1980s, dished it back out. And I think this kind of like, I think the stereotypical nerds, it's a way that nerds distance themselves from being a nerd, because they go, you know, those people that I'm nothing like. It's kind of like that. Oh. But like, you know, I think it's bad for boys, because like anything that was a hobby, any kind of hobby, whether the hobby was Dungeons and Dragons, or whether the hobby, any hobby that wasn't a sport, was treated as sad. So geek shaming is keeping girls out of computer science. I'm doing a lot for boys that geek shaming. Geek shaming. It's not the fact they're geek. Of course they are. People that like science fiction are more likely to go into science. We don't have to make people that like science be portrayed as being sexist and socially incompetent, do we? And it's funny because Doctor Who's got the main character. The main character is a character that is a geek hero. The scientist. He's a hero scientist, and the hero scientist is kind of a dying archetype, or dead archetype, apart from Doctor Who. Doctor Who's kind of resurrected the idea of the hero scientist. And yeah, it's kind of doing a disservice to women in science. With Osgood. I think Osgood was the best example of a girl in science. I have better role models in the original Doctor Who series. In the original Doctor Who series, in the Field to Girls, apparently. In the Field to Girls, it's in enough relationships. To have sexual tension between the companion and the Doctor, and therefore it wasn't in the Field to Girls. Okay, cut a long story short, what genre do you have scientist characters in? Science fiction. That's the genre that you have science characters in. If they're going to have female science role models, they're going to find them in science fiction. If they don't watch science fiction anyway, they won't get them, will they? So long and the short of it, you can't just put a scientist character in. Well, you could make one of the girls in Sex and the City a scientist, I suppose. But the majority of the places, the majority of the genres in which you're going to find female scientist characters is science fiction, because it is in science fiction that scientists tend to be the heroes. If they don't watch science fiction anyway, they're not going to get the role models, whether they're there or not. When courses are optional, as is typical of computer science, students rely on their stereotypes about the field to decide whether to enroll. And as one undergraduate research participant in our lab put it, the current stereotypes of computer scientists is that they are nerdy guys who stay up late coding and drinking energy drinks and have no social life. This geeky image is at odds with the way that many girls see themselves. Whereas, having no social life is something boys naturally aspire to. Oh, I wish I had no social life. That's one of my achievements in life. No social life. I'm very keen on that. Well, sign me up. Sign me up. No social life. Brilliant. Work from our lab shows that when high school girls see Star Trek posters and video games in a computer science classroom, computer games in a computer science classroom? I don't see the connection. What's the connection to computer games and computer science? There's no connection at all. It doesn't make any sense. They are less interested than boys in taking the course. When the classroom is devoid of decor, girls still opt out. It is only when an alternative image of computer science is presented by replacing geeky objects with art and nature posters that girls become as interested as boys. So did you notice something? Okay, girls weren't keen on going into classrooms that had Star Trek posters and computer game posters. But then they weren't any more interested when it had no decor. So it wasn't that the Star Trek posters and the computer game posters were putting them off. It was the lack of posters of nature and posters of art. So basically, kind of mis-selling computer science as being there'd be in some way art and nature will be involved when it isn't. If you're going to miss-sell science, you might as well sell science like this. What on earth are those? Some kind of carbon-based life form? Look at her doing her science there. Oh, some goofy science. Ha! Funny science. And oh, she's seen some science over there. What the hell are they laughing at? I guess we'll never know. Guess we'll never know. What?
Science. It's a girl thing. It's a girl thing.
Okay. You don't get muscles like that doing chemistry. Yeah. Computer science. It's a manly thing. Isn't it a good job that there's enough boys in computer science that we don't have to give it a macho image? All this matters a great deal because optional courses not only reinforce current gender divides, they magnify them. Because boys are more likely to opt in to pre-college experiences with computer science, when they get to college they dominate introductory courses. Bastards! That's clearly cheating. I remember when I was at school, I thought it was cheating to do revision for exams. So really it's just the same logic. I always thought it was very unfair that people that do revision for exams do better because they've done revision. Whereas me, I'm just relying on knowing it already, just knowing it innately. And I thought it was very unfair that people that done some sort of preparation before the exam had an advantage. Yeah, I think maybe if you've done computer studies courses before doing your computer studies course, you'll find it easier. Funny that. They prepared properly. You haven't. Well, you need to get doing computer studies earlier than that, then, don't you? Girls who come in without the same knowledge tend to believe they are worse at computer science and not cut out for the field. Well, they are worse because they've got no prior experience. Well, it's not necessarily true that they're not cut out for the field, but I'd imagine the fact they haven't done it before probably means they don't enjoy it. And generally, if you don't enjoy something, it's not a subject for you to do. You should do the stuff you enjoy, because it tends to be the things that you enjoy are the things that you're going to be better at. The research is clear on what works to encourage more girls to choose computer science. Change the masculine culture. Changing the stereotypes by diversifying computer science environments is one way to reduce gender gaps. Why don't we just change the stereotypes about people that like science fiction? Stop making out the people that like science fiction are somehow sad. Because science fiction is a great way of getting people into science, getting people interested in science, getting them to practice the things, practice the skills that make science easily accessible. You're starting at the wrong end. You're starting at the wrong end. Stop demonising the masculine culture. Stop demonising the masculine culture, and the masculine culture won't be so off-putting, will it? Our research has also found that college women who have a 2-minute interaction with a computer science major, played by student actors, who wear t-shirts that say, "I code, therefore I am," and identify Mystery Science Theatre 3000 as their favourite show, express less interest in majoring in computer science than college women who interact with the same students, wearing regular t-shirts and watching The Office instead. I think what she's just said is that girls are more likely to go in the field if the guys in it are sexy. I think that's basically what she said. If they're wearing geeky t-shirts and they like Mystery Science Theatre, they won't be interested because they're not sexy. Yeah. That's what they said. Yeah, there's a top tip as well. Top tip if you're on the pull. If you're making your mind up about what a person's like on 2 minutes, then you're using stereotypes to do so. Right? Because you can't actually figure out what somebody's like in the first 2 minutes of meeting them. You're taking cultural cues to make your decisions about them. So that doesn't really reflect on the characters those actors are playing when they need to be computer studies students. That really reflects on the attitudes of the subjects in the experiment, not people that wear I code therefore I am. It's not very funny, is it? There's much funnier computer science jokes than that, surely. But you know, there's nothing really negative about liking Mystery Science Theatre 3000. If you're leaping to conclusions about somebody that professors are liking for Mystery Science Theatre 3000, then that shows that you have attitudes that are based on stereotypes, doesn't it? That shows you're prejudiced. Just going to throw in an idea here. The fact that the people who created the study thought, oh, we need to put some sort of joke on the t-shirt that only computers, that only nerds are going to get, and we'll put I code therefore I am. Only nerds are going to get that. I don't know. I'm sorry. No amount of being a nerd is going to make that funny. That's not a funny joke. Perhaps you should have invited somebody who was actually in the culture to come up with a joke that was actually funny. A good slogan to put on a nerd's t-shirt. Personally, I like the one where there's a picture of a Dalek and it says, oh, it's R2-D2. I used to love him in Star Trek. I love that because it's just so meta. Computer science teachers who showcase the ways in which their personalities and interests are broader than the narrow stereotypes may have an easier time convincing girls to come back to their place. That doesn't actually say that. I'll read it again. Computer science teachers who showcase the ways in which their personalities and interests are broader than the narrow stereotypes may have an easier time convincing girls to follow in their footsteps. Back to their place. Culture change isn't always easy, but it is always possible. Is it always desirable? The University of Washington's Computer Science Department has been working hard for the past decade to create a more inclusive culture for women. The department added art and nature posters throughout their building to make it more inviting. And that's nice, isn't it? Because not only by putting up art and nature posters, you got to think about this, it's not just a girls' issue, really. Put up art and nature posters, not only are you making the courses more inviting for girls, you're also making it more inviting for boys that don't like computer science as well. Boys like art and nature. Those boys. Boys that got no interest in computer science. They'll find it more appealing as well. Of course, you would be picking off the girls that are going to be interested in computer science, because they do like science fiction. And they do like computer games. But let's not worry about those, because they're all geeks anyway. Bloody nerds. Nerds! Women were appointed as teaching assistants in many courses. Professors sent personalized emails recognizing women who received high grades in introductory courses. These emails defined success as getting good grades rather than whether one plays video games or knows science fiction references. I'd love to know what this computer science course is, where you're graded, or success is defined by how well you know your science fiction references, or whether you play video games. I think probably success is defined as getting good grades, generally on most courses. The efforts have paid off. Last year, the proportion of undergraduate computer science degrees going to women at the University of Washington, 32%, was higher than any other public flagship university in the country. The gender gap began to close once women could learn computer science in a culture that signaled they belonged. It's time we take the pressure off women to change themselves to fit within masculine cultures. Instead, the pressure should be on society as opposed to girls. So society minus girls equals boys, right? Just doing the maths here. Doing the math. The math is society minus females in the society equals males in the society. I hope that's not too binary for anyone who considers themselves outside the binary. But there we go. We are talking about computer science, so I think it's quite reasonable to talk binary. Geek joke. Yeah, should be up to boys to change, not girls to change, is what they're saying. We should never have to change. To make computer science a field in which all students feel equally welcome. Apart from nerds. Because no one likes nerds. You get nerds out of computer science that make computer science so much more desirable to people that have got social skills and are attractive. Well, that's the end of the article. Time to sum up then, isn't it? So, it's a bit sexist, isn't it? It's a bit sexist to everyone. It's a bit sexist to men, but it's anti-masculinity, isn't it? It's very anti-masculinity. Suggesting there's something wrong with masculine culture. And when I say masculinity, I'm not talking about machismo. We're not talking about that sort of, ooh, go on, hit me in the stomach type masculinity. We're not talking about that kind of masculinity. We're not talking about the sort of masculinity of driving fast cars and shouting, gov, gov, gov! Shooting at people out of the back of cars during car chases. Ooh, that kind of masculinity. We're just talking about sheer boyish joy with enjoying exciting ideas. And it's also very sexist towards women because it's saying that masculine culture doesn't belong to women. The idea is you can be into whatever you like. Girls can like science fiction too. Girls do like science fiction too. There's a lot of girls that like science fiction. And the girls that do like science fiction are the ones that are probably going to enjoy computer science more anyway, and enjoy physics more anyway, enjoy engineering more anyway. To say science fiction is a very good hook for getting kids interested in real science. It's a good primer. It's a good gateway drug into science and science fiction. I think if you get to the age of 12 when you haven't seen an episode of X-Files yet, you're lost. It's not going to happen. Perhaps not X-Files, but something like that. At least watch Star Wars. But Star Wars isn't the best introduction to science fiction, really. It's not proper science fiction. It's just sword and sorcery in space. Sorry, any Star Wars fans watching. I laugh. I laugh at your mystical nonsense. I put my wand at you. Turn into a toad. Ha, it's gone. I mean, not a wand. It's a sonic screwdriver, and I didn't turn you into a toad. I altered your morphic field by changing the resonant frequency of your DNA. How convincing. That's no science, isn't it? Yeah, proper science fiction. Yeah, if you haven't watched at least some science fiction by the time you're 10 years old, you're lost. If you need pictures of art and nature to get you into a subject, the subject that's probably going to appeal to you probably isn't computer science anyway. I'm thinking, well, maybe we should challenge the stereotypes about science fiction fans. Science fiction fans are cool. I don't think we should be teaching boys that they should have to give up their culture in order to appeal to girls. And that goes for in relationships. That was quite sad. I spent so much of my life trying to pretend, hide my passions away, so girls would like me. Looking back, I think that was quite sad. And why I had to feel ashamed of my passions, because they might put girls off. And that also goes for computer science. It's a geek subject. It's geeky because it's a geek subject. There's nothing wrong with being a geek. Nothing shameful about liking science fiction. Nice though if we could see some geek solidarity. So this is to any geeks who have done any geek shaming themselves. But I know geeks are the worst for geek shaming. Whoever sat down and wrote Big Bang Theory, you know, to have written those jokes, you have to be geeks. Okay? To know all the little references, to write the jokes in Big Bang Theory, you have to be a geek to have known all those jokes. And it depicted geeks as being twats. In writing that series, that it took you to have that much geek knowledge to write, you then use that knowledge to make geeks like prats. I think whoever wrote Big Bang Theory should be ashamed of themselves. Yeah. Geeks, stop putting other geeks down and show some solidarity. We're not sad. We're not socially incompetent. We're clearly quite capable of being witty. We're clearly quite capable of being on the ball. And we clearly have some of the most innovative minds in society. So let me stop putting each other down and actually have some pride in ourselves. Stop putting each other down in the hopes of impressing girls. So it only remains for me to say, remember, other opinions are available. This is only one blind man reporting on the nature of elephants. Splundig verthrig, earthlets. Nanu nanu.